now, at least Uber said yesterday, we're not complying. We believe that if we went to court, our drivers would not be classified as as employees.
Hello everyone. I wanted to talk about something that I've brought up on this channel before, and that is the concept of anarcho-tyranny. For those of you who are unfamiliar, anarcho-tyranny is a state of society wherein both anarchy and tyranny exist at the same time. Now, when I've talked about this in the past, it's been in the context of the social justice warrior prosecutors, how they don't prosecute misdemeanor crimes, which leads to a situation where if you're a working class person or a business owner, there is this entire class of people who are constantly committing crimes, constantly subjecting you to all the anarchy that is caused by the lack of enforcement. But at the same time, you as a normal person, if you were to do anything wrong, you would be harshly penalized. But in this video, I'm not going to be talking about the social justice warrior prosecutors or the loony left-wing cities that allow this sort of thing. Instead, in this video, I'm going to be talking about how the United States as a whole, and perhaps even the entire world, is increasingly becoming an anarcho-tyranny type society. And it's with specific regard to these big globalist companies, particularly the tech companies. Now let's start this discussion off talking about Uber, because I'm uber excited to talk about this piece of shit company. If you don't know, I've talked about Uber before. I did a video on the movie Stuber, which is basically corporate propaganda disguised as some sort of Hollywood movie. And in that video, I asked a lot of questions. Like, first and foremost, why is Hollywood releasing a propaganda movie on behalf of a billion-dollar tech company? But in addition to that, how is Uber's business model even legal? It seems for decades upon decades, there have been established taxi cab companies that exist in most big cities, that ordinary people were not able to get in and compete with those taxi cab companies. All of a sudden, this Uber company starts, and in a few years, Uber exists in every single city in every single state. The company doesn't follow any labor regulations, and for the vast majority of drivers who end up driving for the company, they make either less than minimum wage or they end up losing money driving for Uber. How is this not a giant scam? Well, to back up, to answer the first question, how is Uber able to legally operate their business? Well, they weren't. Uber, throughout its corporate history, has constantly broke various laws in the different states and cities that it's operated out of, but it's faced basically no penalty. It's fitting that Uber, the only company whose self-driving car has killed someone, has faced absolutely no prosecution as a result of that. California, recognizing the fact that this was a bad thing, that people were being exploited by this, passed a law that made it a requirement that Uber treats its drivers as actual employees. If they work full-time, they should get health insurance and benefits and things like that. It's a rare moment where California took an actual sensible position on an issue like this. And how has Uber responded? They're simply not going to follow the law. They're just going to ignore it. And it's not just Uber that seems to be getting away with doing whatever it wants. It appears now that if you are a large enough corporation, if you're rich and powerful enough, you have impunity to do basically whatever you want. The federal government doesn't enforce antitrust laws anymore, and it makes no effort to prosecute businesses that commit crimes. I can think of numerous examples of this. Let's start with the big one. The BP oil spill. Do you remember that? In fact, Hollywood made a Mark Wahlberg movie about it. It's a pretty good movie. I recommend you watch it if you want to see how horrible that was. How people died from that. How it caused an ecological disaster. But no one was ever prosecuted for it. Not a single day in jail has been served as a result of any of that. What about the housing crisis that caused the Great Recession? Nobody prosecuted. None of the people involved in any of that faced any sort of prosecution. The Obama Justice Department did nothing. Of course, if you're an American who had a lot of equity in your home, you had your life savings basically completely destroyed by that. While the economy has improved a lot since that period of time, I would say there's still a lot of wealth that was lost by that crisis that hasn't been regained. What about the big Wells Fargo scandal? You know, the one where it gave its employees strict quotas, where it had them compete in sales competitions to sign people up for credit cards, which resulted in a massive amount of identity theft and fraud. No one was ever prosecuted for that. What about the Equifax data breach, where millions upon millions upon millions of Americans had their social security numbers compromised by a credit rating agency? Again, no prosecutions there. Amazon, $11 billion in profit last year. You know the amount of income taxes it paid on that profit? Zero. So I did a little research into how Amazon is able to get away with it. And it's kind of complicated, but it involves the fact that during certain years, Amazon was running at a loss. And for some reason, they're able to take those unprofitable years and use it so they don't have to pay taxes when they're profitable. So basically, our tax laws allow these big tech companies to operate at a loss so they can create the conditions of some sort of monopoly, which is exactly what Amazon did. It had its price so low that it could drive away all of the competition, and for years it lost money in order to become the ultimately dominant online retail store. Now that it's monopolized the marketplace, it's no longer running at a loss and is generating massive profits. But we allow them to not have to pay taxes based on the prior years when they were setting up the monopoly. The fact that something like this is allowed to happen, that Amazon can basically get the taxpayers to subsidize it, monopolizing the market, shows just how ridiculous and corrupt that our system has become at this point. Now, what about Google and Facebook, the companies that constantly spy on you? I thought that we were supposed to have a constitutional right to privacy enshrined in the Constitution. At least that's what Roe v. Wade says in justifying the fact that women have a right to have an abortion. But what good is my right of privacy if I'm constantly being spied on by Google and Facebook? Even if I don't use Facebook, based off other photographs that people post that may contain my photo, Facebook nonetheless compiles a database of information on me. Google phones track you even when they're turned off. Again, I'm questioning this right to privacy. What good is it to me if these companies have impunity to constantly spy on me all the time? I understand that the right to privacy is something that we have versus the government, but I don't really care about the government. The federal government is completely incompetent. The local police in my city are so overworked, they have so many crimes to investigate, that I'm confident that simply by being law-abiding, I don't have to worry about them trampling over my privacy rights or getting involved in my business. They simply have too much stuff on their plate already. And if the police did do something to me that they weren't supposed to do, if they searched me when they weren't supposed to, there are things that I could do about it. I could complain to their supervisor. I could get them in trouble with work. I could even file a civil lawsuit against them for violating my rights. But is there anything I can do if Facebook takes my information and does something with it in a way that harms me? I'd have no recourse for that whatsoever. They're a huge unaccountable corporation that is not subject to any sort of prosecution. The FTC fined Facebook $5 billion for lying to its customers about what sort of surveillance it was conducting on them, and Facebook just didn't even sweat it. They just wrote it off as some sort of business expense. Now, am I worried that a company like Google may someday in the future use my information to try and replace me with an AI or something like that? Yeah, that's a real concern that I have. Again, constitutional right to privacy, completely worthless because the government doesn't go after any of these big companies when they commit serious crimes. And you know what? I get it. There's probably some of you watching this video who are thinking to yourself, well, I'm not really concerned about that. I just want to sit at home, play video games, not worry about any of that stuff that's going on, not worry about the dystopian future that we're heading towards. But even you are subject to bullshit. Just look at the video games that are coming out these days. Look at Fallout 76. The entire thing is a massive fraud. Everything about that game, literally everything, is fraudulent. Compared to the previous games in the series, the game had almost no content in it. The game released extremely broken and buggy. For a game that was billed as some sort of semi-mass multiplayer type game, the economy was completely ruined within days by exploits that were so big that you could drive a truck through it. The people who bought the expensive premium edition ended up getting bags that didn't even look like those advertised in the commercial. The promotional run that they were going to release alongside the game wasn't shipped till months after the game came out and appeared to consist of a cheap plastic shell glued to a bottle, so it looked even crappier and worse than if you were to just go out and buy a glass bottle of rum at the grocery store. It couldn't even pour right with the plastic on it. When I played the game, I was immediately struck by how scarce certain things that I needed were. It played almost like a free-to-play game, where my armor was constantly breaking, I was constantly running out of ammo, and the only way for me to remedy these things, the only way for me to repair my armor, was to engage in the most tedious bullshit imaginable, which was basically constantly rejoining servers until I happened upon one that just happened to have the materials that I needed not plucked by some other player. And sure enough, a few months later, in complete violation of what they said that they were going to do, Bethesda released armor repair kits that you could buy with real money. Every single thing about that game is a fraud. And it's not just Fallout 76, it's increasingly like every video game that comes out is like this. These companies believe that they can do whatever they want and will not face consequences. And that's exactly what happens. It's Anarcho-Tyranny. When it comes to what big corporations can do to you, how they can defraud you, how they can spy on you, how they can ruin your business by causing ecological disasters or mortgage crises, there's complete impunity. As a citizen, you just have to put up with this. You just have to deal with all the anarchy that's caused by these big corporations. But of course, at the same time, you don't have the same rights that they do. You see, you commit a crime, you're gonna get arrested for it. You're gonna go to jail. You post a video on YouTube with 5 seconds of copyrighted content on it, they're immediately gonna ban that video in the entire world and put a big red strike mark on your channel. But I guess that's just how it works in our liberal individualist paradise here in the United States. If you like this video and you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe.